our project area. This wall is an accent wall. You can see it's already a different color. It's just drywall right now, which is really just a simple way, you know, of just making it an accent. You just paint it a different color. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to take off all the window trim and the jamb extension on this thing. Take off all the baseboard and the shoe molding and all the crown molding. All right, we'll have to take all that stuff off. We're going to put a veneer up. It's just simply a wooden veneer. It's shiplap. You've seen it 100 times. It's all over HGTV and DIY. It's just a pre-cut board that I get made by Metri that I get out of one of the home centers here locally. So we're going to do that. We're going to install all this. I'm going to show you some secrets and tips about being level, and we'll do a little time lapse and get this thing going up the wall. It should take me a good part of the day. I already moved all the stuff out of the room. It should take us a good part of the day to get this thing set up and get installed and everything else. So hang with me. We'll do a little time lapse, and then I'm going to show you some little cut arounds with the window and the outlets, what we have to keep preserved, and then we'll go from there. All right, hang with me.
I had to remove 2 outlets for this project from the wall. Just remember, if you're not comfortable with electrical work, hire somebody that is.
Alright, so our demolition part's done. I got all the crown molding off. I'm saving all the trim. I'm going to reuse it on this project. Every foot of trim I don't have to buy is money that stays in my pocket. So I can reuse all this stuff, and I'm going to show you a trick to cut back the existing crown molding above us so we don't have to take the sides off the wall. Same thing with the baseboard. We can just cut it with our little oscillating / buzz tool. But the next step is I'm going to mark all my studs on this. I'm trying to eliminate as many nails as possible. There's a lot of opportunity here for exposed nail heads because we have to face nail some of this stuff. It's not tongue and groove like hardwood floor, and the fewer nails I have, the easier it is for me to fill in and finish. So I'm going to mark my studs so I'm not, you know, shooting multiple nails trying to find a stud when I'm installing this stuff, especially through the face of the wood. So I'm going to get that going and lay it all out, and then we'll check back with you in a few minutes.
It was pretty easy for me to find my framing inside the wall. All I did was just locate the outlets. Generally speaking, on either side of your outlet, you're going to find a stud somewhere. Just make your mark there and pull your 16-inch measurements off of that.
All right, so let's take a quick look at our material. It's just shiplap, literally shiplap. It's called shiplap because it laps over one, laps over the other. Can you guys see that? See that folded in? My focus is probably a little bit goofy. And there's a design notch in there. So when you put it together, it's got that big gap in the middle. That stays there. Now we can sheet it and go a little bit higher, but we're not gonna do that. We're gonna stack it like it's supposed to be. So these will stack horizontally, and there'll be a gap in the middle that kind of defines that look. All right, that's what we're going for. This is a solid pine material. It's not finger jointed. It's pre-primed on all 4 sides, actually 6 sides with this. But this stuff is cheap. It's made by Metri. They're a trim profile company. I don't even know where they're from, but you get it in most of your home centers. I think 85% of the stuff that Lowe's sells is Metri. So it's not the greatest material in the world, but it is inexpensive. I could have gotten unprimed, regular, and a little bit thicker. This is not quite 3/4 of an inch. I could have gotten 3/4 of an inch thick tongue and groove or something like that, but it's double the price. And then I have to pickle it if I wanted to, or I'd have to prime it and add another step. So this will be just fine for this application, all right? So what I've got to do with these 2 pieces, or one of these pieces, is one of the first things I have to do is I have to cut back on my corners, my crown molding, and my baseboard. All right, I don't want to have to take that whole piece of crown molding down on both sides, put my wall up, and then put that back up. There's a cheating way I can do that, and we're going to get into that right now. All right. All right, so this light's a little bit weird, and I apologize for that, but it's just the way the room is lit. So I've got my material here. The material is going to go on the wall like this from ceiling to floor. And what I need to do is, this is in the way. There's crown molding up in this corner, it's in the way. So I don't want to have to cut the profile of the crown around this. That's a huge pain in the butt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this flat on here up against my wall. And I'm going to use what's called an oscillating tool. That's an oscillating tool, all right? You get them at Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards. And I'm going to put my blade on here, and then it's going to cut. I'm going to follow that profile all the way down, and I'm going to cut flush so that my material will slide all the way tight to that wall behind that crown molding. That saves me from having to take all the crown molding down and repaint it all and nail it back up and all that stuff. So I'm going to put a little time lapse on so you guys can kind of get an idea of how that's going to go. My cut doesn't have to be exactly precise and perfect on this thing because I'm going to have crown molding to cover that edge. So I will cope the old crown molding back into place so I don't have to worry about it being perfectly tight. I just need to be able to make sure I can get my material behind it. I will do the same thing on the baseboard, the two bottom corners of the baseboard and the two upper corners of the crown mold. So here's the gap I created with that right there. You can see that. And then this slides now smoothly into place. Very little gap in there, and allows me to get that behind there. That's the little piece I cut out. That little teeny piece is all I had to cut out with that little button. Okay, so it's time for our first piece. Here's a little piece of scrap, all right? Couple important notes here. The blue line you guys can see down there, that's the old paint line. That's where the top of the baseboard terminates, all right? I want the bottom of this to be somewhere in that blue line. The lower down, the better off I am because it'll sit flat on there, but I can always put a little scrap filler block in the bottom to help keep that baseboard from tilting back. All right, it's got to be, the first piece is the most important. It's got to be perfectly level. So I'll set this up off the floor just a little bit on one end with the block, and I will tilt it and pivot it, and then I will nail it in through the face and make sure that it's perfectly level, and then do my small piece on the side. We're about 14, just under 14 feet wide here. I've got 12-foot material, so I'm going to have a big piece, and a small piece, and I'll set my pattern on that. I don't want my butt joints to be within one stud length of one another. So when I put another piece here, I want 2 stud widths at the next level up. Everybody understand that? All right, so the other thing is I don't want to have to put 1,000 nails in the face of this thing. It'll take forever because I have to fill it all, sand it all. It's a big pain in the ass. So I'm going to use construction adhesive on the back, and I'll be nailing through the face and maybe one every other stud going through it. I'll let that construction adhesive take me through this thing and give me good adhesion to the wall so there's not a ton of movement, and I'm not worried about paint crack or anything like that, all right? So let's get this first piece cut to length at the stud. That's an important thing. Another important part of this is when you put your pieces together, they're going to butt together, all right? When you put those two pieces together in the middle of the wall, it has to be on a stud. That's why I drew the lines, because it gives me an exact placement of where I need to put my nails. So I will toenail into both sides of those pieces to make sure that my lap is not, or my butt joint is not sticking out and profiling away from the piece next to it, all right? So let's get this stuff installed. Stick around.
This first piece is absolutely critical to the entire project. I go to great lengths to make sure that everything is level. I'm using my long 6-foot level, which is my most accurate level, making sure that everything goes smoothly, it's level, it's even, there's no dips or bows in it. If I can make sure that everything is level on the first piece, every piece after that will take care of itself. So the second and third rows are pretty important also. Clearly they have the outlets in them. I just took my time, made sure I measured everything twice, and made sure I only had to cut everything one time. Once I did that, I knew I was going to be free and clear to run all the way up to the window, and it was going to go much more quickly after these first few rows. Of course, with any video that I film in my own house, such as this, Bentley the Red Dog has to make an appearance. He's just curious and wants to see what's going on. He's trying to always help.
All right, so we're starting day 2. I didn't get set up and started until about 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon. This morning I'm back at it. I'm just gonna, I got about 6 feet off the ground yesterday in about 4 or 5 hours of work. No big deal. I wasn't in a huge rush to get it done. So today we're gonna get around the window part, and we'll have to put notches around the window and fill in on both sides of the window and go above the window and get all that stuff filled in. So, part of the challenge of today is I'll have to do more jamb extension on that window because my wall is now thicker with this material on it.
So I'll have to do some jam extension and put my casing and baseboard and crown back on. I'll get all that done today easily. But yeah, I had a couple issues yesterday, not really bad, but on this bottom inside corner, I had a couple boards that were starting to drop down a little bit, just getting a little bit off a level, which I'm not a fan of. And that's probably due to the fact that this material is not super consistent. It's inexpensive material. I didn't spend, $1 million on this stuff. This is like $275 in material for the whole wall. So I got the cheaper stuff. It's a little bit thinner. So there's some deflection and some wave and some crown on these boards. You just have to kind of contend with that and make sure everything's being nailed into a stud to keep everything consistent and stable, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So really, not a big deal. I cheated a little bit on one of these, and the human eye will never pick up on it. I know it's there, but that's not important. So yeah, so let's get this thing rolling again this morning and see if we can get this thing wrapped up. Going around the window is pretty simple. I just notched out anywhere where I had to notch out for my jam extension there and just continued on up. I did have to make a quick notch around the top piece that I let hang down because it was easier to do it that way than it was to cut it on the saw. So yeah, pretty simple, and just went right around the window. All right, so as you can see behind me, I'm done. It's all finished, complete, all the way up to the ceiling. We ended up with about a 1-inch gap on one end and a half, or not even a 1/4-inch gap on the other end. It actually turned out pretty good for my layout in terms of my crown molding. So my crown molding is going to come down to that level. You can see where the old crown molding is. So I'll cover that whole gap. The window laid out really nicely. I only had to do one cut on the bottom right here. The top laid out to where it will just cover my jam extension. All right, jam extension, I've got to fill in this gap. So from this point of the actual window unit out to here, I've got to fill that in with a piece of jam extension. I'm going to use 3/4-inch poplar or pine. I've got some out in my shop that I'm going to use. It's going to sit on there. I'll fill it in like that flush. I'll fill it in like this flush, and then my casing will go around the outside. Yeah, I think it turned out pretty good. I mean, all in all, it's not perfect. I've got a lot more nail heads than I thought. I was going to use more glue than I was going to, but it just wasn't going to stick really well to this wall. But yeah, my butt joints don't look too bad there. They're hard to see. Let's get a little bit closer up so you guys can see the detail. It's hard to, with the white on white. You can see all the profile lines here. That's kind of what gives the wall its definition. You can see all the nail head holes that I've got to fill in. So I've got probably a couple hundred nail heads to fill in on this thing, but I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. It really didn't take a lot of time. I was maybe an hour today, maybe 4 hours yesterday, 5 hours yesterday. So I got about 5 or 6 hours of labor into this thing, about, $250, $300 of material. I'm going to go ahead and put my trim back on before I do any kind of caulking or any kind of filling of nail holes. So I'm going to always start at the bottom and go up. So I'll do the baseboard and shoe molding first. Then I'll do that window behind me. I'll do the jam extension and then put my casing back on, and then the crown molding will be last. So I'm going to eat some lunch real quick. It's about that time, and I'll get on this trim here in a few minutes. As I mentioned before, I was able to save all the old trim and reuse it all, which saved me maybe $100 in material. The baseboard was real simple to install. I just had to cope both sides of it and put it right back into place. It was virtually already to the correct size anyway, because I didn't make my sidewalls any shorter. So yeah, it was pretty simple. As you can see, it went in very smoothly. So the window casing here and the jam extension was quite a bit of work. It took me a good hour and a half to get all of that taken care of. I had to custom cut each piece of jam extension to fit. The wall is very wavy. It's very much not perfect. So I had to make sure each one fit well up against the new face of that shiplap I installed. So I took my time and got it right. And then once I got that done, my casing was pretty simple to put back on. It was all the same size. I did have to make a couple adjustment cuts, but it was very simple. But it turned out nice. It just took a lot longer than I thought. A quick shout out to my beautiful patient wife for helping me install this crown molding. It was too long to do by myself.
So we're all done with this sucker. I still have to caulk and paint everything, but the installation's in. Got the baseboard and shoe mold on, got all the window trim on, including the casing and the jam extension, and the crown molding. Let's take a look and see what it looks like here. So you can see the window. I had to put, this is all brand new jam extension, and this is all brand new. I had to make wider pieces. It was a huge pain in the rear end to get it done, mostly because each piece was weighty, like the wall is so inconsistent. I knew it was. I trimmed this window out 11 years ago when I remodeled the whole house. But you can see it looks pretty good. Once I get some primer and paint on there, and some caulk, it's gonna look really good. Crown molding's done. Everything's up and in place. My corners look pretty tight. That's one of the things we look for with shiplap, is that board, when it touches that wall, there's a pretty tight seam. Now I will end up putting in a little bit of caulk on that sucker, and then my baseboard. I still have to put my outlets back in and get that taken care of. There's another outlet back there behind the ladder. You can see a couple outlets, my internet and my our lamp outlet there. But yeah, and another tight corner. So this project went pretty well. Overall, it took me about 6 hours today. That window trim took quite a bit of time. And it took me about 4 hours yesterday. So I had about a day with cleanup and everything, about a day and a half involved in this thing. I don't know how much I would charge for this. I've got about $350 in material total. You know, another 10 hours, you know, believe it or not, for finished trim work, you're gonna look at $50 an hour or so on some of this stuff. So you're looking at another, $500. So I would probably be every bit of $1,500, $1,800 to install all this for somebody in their house. At the end of the day, it adds a lot of value. This is one of those things that people walk into the room when the house is for sale and they go, oh, that's really cool. That's a really neat accent wall. So that's what we were going for here. It was kind of the style I was going for. So on the next one, I'm gonna do just a simple time lapse of filling all the holes, sand everything down, get everything caulked in and painted. So I appreciate you guys logging into Lincoln Logs TV. Your support and your watches and your views and your likes really help us grow the channel. We're trying to do some things with this thing. We're trying to make it really cool. We're trying to get better. I'm trying to get better doing this stuff all the time. So I'm going to be doing more videos. My goal is to do about 40 to 50 videos in 2021. So if you like what you see, hit that thumbs up button. If you like the channel, hit that subscribe button. We'll grow this thing together, give you guys more content, try to show you how to do some things, how I do it and how our company does it and approaches different things. So yeah, appreciate you guys logging into Lincoln Logs TV. Have a great one.